Hello, I'm Alexander Payne. When I saw La Dolce Vita for the first time, I was in a way fortunate to see it under circumstances still redolent of the scandal it had caused in many countries upon its initial release. I was a college student in Spain, where the film had been banned by Franco in the Catholic Church 21 years before, and now in the fall of 1981 it was finally being distributed, 6 years after Franco's death. It was a significant fall for me, for I saw for the first time two controversial films from the early 1960s, which were to have lasting impressions on me, both as an individual and as a filmmaker, La Dolce Vita and Buñuel's Viridiana. Often when exposed to great art for the first time, one is unsure quite what to make of it, and that was certainly the case when I saw La Dolce Vita. Of course, I knew I was in the presence of greatness, and many images and sequences left indelible impressions. But I didn't really begin to understand it until I had seen other Fellini and then returned to it. And I've returned to it often. Each time I do, I find I grow into it more, and I have greater appreciation for this giant canvas of beauty and ugliness, seduction, melancholy, humor, imagination, and mystery. I don't pretend to be a Fellini scholar, but I've been asked to share some observations about this film that might serve as a very basic introduction. And the first element that I feel deserves mention is the structure. Rather than pushing his protagonist, the gossip journalist Marcello, through a single classically unified, say, three-act story, Fellini instead follows him through a series of disparate episodes that form a seemingly loose narrative string, a string which is suddenly pulled taut only in the final moments of the film. This was also the technique in his previous masterpiece, The Nights of Cabiria, and also in 8½. It's often noted that La Dolce Vita marked Fellini's transition between his realistic or neo-realistic films of the 50s and his more imaginative, say, circusy films of the 60s and 70s. This is certainly true, but for me personally, La Dolce Vita is a companion piece not so much to its adjacent films, Cabiria and 8½, as it is to Antonioni's films of the same period, La Ventura, La Notte, and The Eclipse, films which also deal with empty lives, moneyed people of our modern world, adrift without moral reference points in a sea of dissatisfaction and alienation. Indeed, Mastroianni's Marcello is very similar to the character he portrays in La Notte, a compromised, loveless man who chases women without really knowing why, who harbors vague aspirations to a nobler use of his time. But Fellini is much more a natural showman and entertainer than the intellectual Antonioni. So the spiritual decay, the cynicism, the pessimism that Fellini is dealing with are balanced by large doses of warm humor and spectacle. And also, of course, I might add, of love. Love not just for humanity, but for the possibilities of the cinema. Many Italian directors of the 60s and 70s were reaching into new and brilliant formal structures and creating sprawling films. But unlike Visconti's The Leopard, say, or Sergio Leone's epics, or Bertolucci's 1900, all of which have something in common with opera, I find that the sensibility in La Dolce Vita, as in Antonioni's films, has much more in common with the modern novel, while of course remaining utterly cinematic. Perhaps Richard Schickel in his commentary will note aspects of the astounding visual style and cinematography, and of course Nino Rota's music. After all, the Fellini film is largely unimaginable without that. So I will end by saying simply that I am among the generations of filmmakers who have found and will continue to find inspiration in La Dolce Vita.